The twin is probably the bad one. Yeah, we're gonna go with that. But let's find out for sure, starting here with the IMDb plot. After the tragic loss of his son, a man begins experiencing terrifying visions of a figure that looks like himself. As reality unravels, he must confront his past and the supernatural force haunting him before it consumes him completely. Alright, it's gonna consume him completely. That's the ending we're going for. Okay, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. You'll have to see what happens if that happens or not. Anyway, this is a new film out on Shudder. So we'll try to kind of keep this spoiler free or not. Whether he gets consumed by the evil or not, I guess I'll leave that for you guys to see. But yeah, so we'll kind of leave this spoiler free if possible, and it's definitely possible because, I'll be honest. This was one I wasn't sure that I was going to review. I tell you guys sometimes I'm not sure if I'm going to review something or not. It was a little weird, a little strange in some parts, and I don't know. I've is maybe a touch slow, maybe slow burn, sort of. Although they try to get you with some scares in it. I mean, they are there. But before I get into more specifics, the basics of the story here is that early on you can see a scene when the main character here is little. And I guess his grandmother's, something's wrong with her, and she's kind of pounding the door and scaring the hell out of him. And then, we're going to see this kind of incident in some flashbacks as the movie goes on. And you'll find out a little bit more about what happens that night. But at the beginning, you kind of see that, and you find out that grandma passed in that incident. And then, like I said, you'll find out a little bit more details about that as the film goes on. Part of his memory as the movie goes through. Later on, we'll see him obviously as a grown-up. And he's now married and he has a child. And you see a scene where he's downstairs. He sends the kid upstairs to do something. And before he can check on him, his kid comes to the edge of the stairs and has an accident and unfortunately passes away. And this becomes a heavy burden for him to the point where he almost wants to take his life. And then he has to obviously, go through some psychiatric evaluation and so forth. And his wife ends up kind of leaving him at the house alone, and she's looking for a divorce. I don't know if they officially got divorced or not, but basically it's a little time longer, and he's kind of now stuck in the home where his son has died, and that's also his childhood home. So, lots of bad stuff, has happened to him now in this house, and he's kind of just left there to deal with the trauma sort of by himself. I mean, during most hours by himself, but he does have a guy, a psychologist, come, and that was set up by his wife to come and kind of talk with him and kind of give him a session here and there. So as he's kind of in this house and by himself, the more time that goes by, he starts again, like I said, he's going to have some flashbacks of that moment when he was little. But also starts kind of seeing things, and more specifically seeing what seems to be himself, but kind of a different version of himself, and obviously not a good version of himself. So as this prolonged goes on and on, obviously it's going to get a little more intense, a little bit more confusing. He's gonna be able to not be able to figure out, like where the lines are of reality and not, what he's seeing and what he's not. And so some strange things are going to happen, and he's going to seem obviously strange to other people. And part of it is the psychologist kind of digging into his past and, in a little ways kind of goes above and beyond to kind of help him. So, that's kind of where the story goes, and the battle here. It might sound a little bit familiar. We may have seen, a common thing with some horror movies and this kind of thing. I think, one of the things that's really pushed here in this movie, and what one of the things that actually does kind of well is pushing that grief, and you're really going to feel for him in certain circumstances. Maybe it's a little hard to feel for him once he starts kind of maybe really going crazy, and really getting into seeing stuff, maybe later in the film. But I think early on, you're really going to feel his stress, his pain, his grief. I think that the film does a good job of pushing that, and you see it, and obviously, what happened to him when he was young, and then losing his son, and then basically his wife leaving him. You're going to really feel that. I know that there's one scene where he actually ventures out into the world, into the grocery store, and they kind of set it up where he's feeling the pressure of that moment, and sometimes you watch a film and you have something that's relatable, and I've had that kind of experience before, and that relatable experience. I thought that was a scene that was super. Actually, it was a little creepy for myself, because like I said, it was super relatable. Unfortunately for me, to be in a circumstance like that, to kind of have those emotions and feel that, and feel the weight of the world on you while everybody's just basically grocery shopping, but you're feeling other stuff. So I thought they nailed that part of the film. Like I said, there was an oddness, a strangeness to the movie, and that was obviously him seeing himself or something always there. When it started to get into that, it did come a little bit weird, and was kind of a little bit hard to keep track of what exactly was going on, going back and forth. And so forth. So, I understand that's the horror part, and, they're trying to mix you in between trying to scare you and then trying to, show, what's going on in his head or in his mind, and trying to scare him, but also scare you. But it was also a little weird. And then, I'm not going to say too much about the end and the specifics of it, but I would just say that part of it kind of reminded me, I don't know why, The Conjuring is coming up, and it was kind of, giving me that vibe, or it's the Insidious. That's what I'm looking for. Kind of going into the further zone, and it was kind of giving me that kind of vibe towards the end of the movie. So I don't know. That was also very strange. Obviously picked up the tension there, and they did a good job with that. But also was still a level of weirdness, and definitely kind of reminded me of that. But yeah, so it's definitely an emotional movie. So if you're looking for something that's going to kind of start you off on into emotions, and maybe on a low emotions, and like I said, maybe if you've gone through similar stuff, it might take you there, as it did me a little bit. But then, it will get into some of the horror. Like I said, it will try to scare you a little bit. I don't know that I got, hugely into it. Maybe a jump scare here or there. I don't think they try to push it too much, but obviously, they have to inject some horror into the film. But yeah, to me, it was just, it was a little weird. So I was a little 50-50 on the movie. I thought, the guy who's playing the main character here, he did a really good job, especially with the emotions in it, and some of the craziness that happens. Definitely, some good scenes there of him, and playing with these emotions in scenes where it was just him battling through it. Before we get him into the horror stuff, which was fine as well. But I thought he did a good job. So with that, all in all, I think, maybe it wasn't a totally film for me, even though certain parts were relatable. It was just kind of, it kind of came off a little strange to me. So, solid movie overall, and I think, there's going to be some of you out there that like this kind of movie, and I think it will work well for you. Just wasn't really my kind of movie. But still, it's still a good movie. I'm not gonna slam it for being a bad movie. It wasn't terrible or anything like that. I said the guy did a good job, and even I thought the guy who played the doctor, he did a really good job. The wife was okay. The doctor did a pretty good job as well, especially when they kind of had to play off of each other and so forth. So, I think I'm just gonna give it 2 pools of blood at the end of the day out of 5. Like I said, it'd probably be a more solid movie for some of you guys out there who might like this a little bit, this type of movie a little bit more. It wasn't necessarily my type of movie. So, yeah, I'm just going to go with 2 pools of blood. So, with that, horrorgory-reviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all my reviews written in video. Certainly tons of video reviews here on YouTube, so you can like, subscribe, and do everything else that everybody wants you to do. If not, no worries. It is okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook information down below as well, so you can reach out there. Talk horror, talk about this movie, other movies. Down in the comment section as well. And maybe you liked the movie a little bit more than I did, or maybe you didn't. Feel free to throw in your 2 cents there as well. And with that, I'll catch you on the next review, horror fans.